And the situation on the ground, I'm now joined by Kefiloe Chuene, Gift of the Givers KZN Community Liaison Officer, for more on what is being done, particularly to facilitate relief efforts. Kefiloe, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. There's some who have called for a scaling up of disaster response from the KZN government, expressing a degree of frustration. How are you finding the response on the ground?
Hi, Thabo. Thank you so much for having me. The response on the ground, I mean, there's been some progress over the past couple of days. Most of the people that were displaced have been placed in temporary homes. However, there's still some disgruntled people on the ground because obviously this entire situation has been traumatic, it's been taxing, and it's just been a rather slow process in terms of getting them to safety and ensuring that they've been placed in good homes in the meantime. I think another point of frustration is obviously because as much as there's a temporary measure, people still had to have their belongings put in storage, and now they are living in temporary housing and they are told to be together, all of them squished in tiny places, a bit overcrowded. However, I believe that the NHBRC as well as Home Settlement, as well as Human Settlement is doing some kind of good work in terms of getting people settled, especially considering that they're going into the weekend.
How are you supporting government to do its job, I suppose, in this particular instance, and how are you finding that collaboration?
Well, we're not really supporting government, Thabo. If I have to be honest, we're here for the people. We're not so much interested in what government's doing. Our point of interest may be just to push them to do things correctly, because it is within people's human rights to be housed correctly. So we're more here to support the people that have been affected in ways with partnering with donors, ensuring that people are fed, housed, and obviously warm and put in a safe place.
Now, of course, National has also come onto this particular matter, not just province, with the minister making an announcement on this issue of the temporary housing. Do you find that there are now more resources and capacity has been expanded by the stepping in, I suppose, of the minister?
Look, Thabo, this is one of those things, I think, if anything, they're trying to manage public opinion and ensuring that they don't get themselves into trouble. I don't believe that this is something that's going to be long-term. Bringing in National should have been done from the very beginning. I don't believe that it's good that something like this always has to happen. People's lives been put in danger. In fact, people's lives been lost. And then people only then deciding that they should bring in National, and then the minister having something to say. In general, there should be measures put in place so that when things like this happen, we don't need to go to the extent of bringing in National. Our municipality in eThekwini should be prepared, considering how often these floods are occurring.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, the long-term game. How do you see the, I suppose, effort to be more preventative than being reactive actually playing out? I mean, from your own experience, what are the things that should be done now, at least by the provincial government?
Well, to begin with, they need to put people in proper housing. It needs to be placed in the correct places, and it shouldn't be a rushed job. I think once the moment that the National and the minister, they kind of go into a little bit of a panic, then they don't do things correctly. So they need to firstly put people in correct housing, and then also just with the infrastructure around. The roads are in a terrible condition. The stormwater draining almost doesn't exist. It's constant. It's not just in these informal settlements where flooding is a problem and where people's lives are in danger. So they're going to need to really, it is preventative measures, but it needs to not be a rush job. It needs to be people put in place to properly plan and decide how it is that they're going to go about assisting people in the long term.
Yeah. So as we sit now, I mean, you would say the infrastructure is still vulnerable. I mean, should there be another event? Will the infrastructure be able to respond adequately to that particular challenge?
Absolutely not. The infrastructure is very, very vulnerable at this point. I mean, just looking at the Lamontville that was affected on Tuesday evening, I drove past there yesterday. It's still a mess. The road is completely off the road. There's no electricity in some parts. It's really bad. So there hasn't been any change. And should anything happen, should we have just a little bit more rainfall, than we did the other day, it's going to be an absolute mess.
So they're using a word called building back better. I mean, the disaster recovery strategy. How are you going to play a role there? I mean, if there is any role you can play.
Sure. I don't know how we will play a role, Thabo. Unfortunately, as I said, as I'd mentioned in the week, that a lot of this is on the government. You know, they need to take accountability and actually follow through on their plans. And we're going to support the people should anything happen. That's what we're mainly here for. In terms of what government has to do, we're going to have to hold them accountable and wait for them to actually put things into place.
Kefiloe Chuene, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this afternoon. That's Kefiloe, they're speaking on behalf of Gift of the Giver.